and very, very telling, right? There's a lot of water in Naples, not just at the beach, okay? Not everything is at the beach, but there are a lot of canals. There are a lot of homes on water. There are a lot of homes that have docks and boats, and they can take them out on the canals and come out to the Gulf of Mexico. Surge is going to inundate so many of these neighborhoods. We're forecasting a surge as high as 15 feet. Which is why so many people have evacuated. In Naples, by the way, in some of these images you see, it is ghost town. There is hardly anybody here. There are some first responders. Our emergency operations center is open. There's some media here, and that is about it. Actually, the mayor speaking earlier today saying first responders are here, but during the height of the storm, you cannot count on them.
Once the winds get to be 40+ miles an hour, no first responders, no emergency services, nobody's coming out because we're not going to put their lives in danger. So, and I think people realize that we've made that point, but there are a lot of people that say, no, I've been through other ones and I'm gonna guts this one out.
So you get the point here. You get the point, right? It's one of those deals where if you're here, you chose to stay, you're on your own at this point, okay? And the conditions just go downhill and exponentially worse as we head through the night and through the day tomorrow with winds that we have not seen the likes of in a very, very long time. I want to bring in now our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knabb, who has been monitoring Irma for I feel like weeks now, Dr. Knabb. But I want to ask you two particular questions about Irma's track. Have we seen the turn? Because we've been anticipating this turn for days now. And the forward speed, it's slowed down. Forward speed's only roughly, 7 miles per hour? What does that tell you about Irma? Does that change anything?
Well, we are in the process of the turn. Last night it was moving west. Now it's moving west-northwest. So the turn has begun, but it hasn't completed itself. And when hurricanes turn and reach the end of the ridge like this one is, they can slow down a bit. But once it really starts to make the turn to the northwest and north-northwest, it'll start to speed up as it goes near over the west coast of Florida. So it's in the process of happening. All the models insist on a continued turn to the right. And so this is going to directly impact the Keys, if not the direct landfall, darn close. And then it's going to do everything we're saying it's going to do in southwest Florida and farther north. And it continues to be, regardless of all those details, a wind and inland flood threat for the entire Florida peninsula, and still a storm surge threat on the East Coast. And I'll explain why in a little bit. So the west-northwest motion at 9 miles per hour, that'll change. That'll change to northwestward as we go into tomorrow. It is clearing the coast of Cuba. The eye itself is still part of the circulation on land there. Here are the lower and middle Keys. So they're getting hammered with some bands that are pretty potent, but that's just the beginning. And all the way up on the Florida Peninsula, all the way up into Palm Beach County, Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, gusts recently above 60 miles per hour. And these nasty bands have had some isolated tornadoes, frequent lightning, and really high rainfall rates are getting some flash flood warnings. Here's one between Naples and Fort Myers. So all the hazards in play here, and as the track unfolds here, we again don't know exactly where the center of the hurricane is going to go. Could it stay farther west and stay offshore and make landfall in the Florida Big Bend area? Sure, that's possible. Could it go on the right-hand side and perhaps go directly over Orlando? That's also possible. The models, as you know, over the last few days have done a lot of shifting back and forth. They're not exactly perfect. Don't count on a perfect track forecast here. But it doesn't matter what the details of the track end up being. This is strong enough and large enough to pose that grave storm surge risk to the southwest coast. And it's also large enough to continue to threaten the southeast and east coast of Florida with storm surge. So there's still storm surge warnings in effect. I'll show you those in a moment. And the threat of storm surge goes all the way up into the very vulnerable Florida Big Bend area and also the coast of Georgia. So let's take a look at a couple of particular areas on the potential storm surge flooding map. This is where we pick a point on the map and we show you what is the reasonable worst case scenario for how high above normally dry ground the storm surge could get and how far inland from the beach the storm surge could go. So if we take a look first at in southwest Florida, you can see how widespread and how far inland from the immediate beach the storm surge flooding can go. It is more of an inland problem for southwest Florida than it is for southeast Florida. Extremely vulnerable areas in southwest Florida. And if you look at the area near Naples and Fort Myers, that is the area in which we are especially concerned of a catastrophic, devastating storm surge event that's about to unfold. Here's Naples, here is US 41, and there are evacuations that have been called here in Collier County. And again, this is not just a beachfront problem. And look at the reds are 9 feet plus above normally dry ground. So if you were standing in any of these spots, there's the potential that the storm surge flooding could go substantially above your head. Then if we go farther north into the Fort Myers, Sanibel area, notice because of the river and the bays, it's not just a beachfront problem. Look how far inland the potential for several feet of storm surge flooding above normally dry ground goes. That's why so many of these areas, not just at the beach, not just the barrier islands, have been told to evacuate. Let's go a little farther north. We take a look at the Tampa Bay area. Talk about an area that is not just a Gulf front problem. This is inside Tampa Bay. Look at all these areas in the yellows and red that could exceed that 3-foot life-threatening threshold, and it includes the downtown Tampa area and many areas surrounding the bay that don't have anywhere that they can see the Gulf of Mexico. This is on the bay, and that's because as the hurricane goes by, and if we look at the storm surge warning areas, as the hurricane goes by to the north, what's going to happen is the south side of the hurricane is going to very potently push the Gulf of Mexico into the coastal areas, and it could push it into Tampa Bay, into the inlets and the rivers along southwest Florida. And even as the hurricane goes by, just like Wilma did, the hurricane could push storm surge into the Keys after they get it from the north and east side of the hurricane as it goes by. So these storm surge warnings, again, highlight the areas where there is the danger of life-threatening storm surge. But again, the greatest values that we're concerned about are in the southwest Florida area. But I did want to highlight, Sarah, if we go back one more time over to the storm surge flooding map, if we go one more place, I want to go down to South Florida, down to the Miami area. This is still an area where there could be some storm surge flooding. Generally speaking, in southeast Florida, we could see somewhere in there 4 to 6 feet above normally dry ground. Here is the northern end of Biscayne Bay, and you see some blues and some yellows in here because you're going to get a southerly flow for many, many hours as the hurricane passes by off to the west. So this is a storm surge problem, Mike, for a lot of places, west coast and east coast, in addition to all the other hazards, the winds, the heavy rainfall, inland flooding, tornadoes for the whole peninsula. Back to you.
Yeah, Dr. Knapp, thank you. It's just a lot to compute. You know what I mean? It's just a lot for folks to take in because the hazards just make you so anxious. That's for sure. And so many people that have left are just really wondering what their homes are going to look like when they come back, right? Winds become a very big factor for us here short term. They're going to increase immensely tonight. I'm going to show you the forecast so you get a good idea of what that component of this hurricane is going to bring you right now in Naples. Winds right around gusting about 28 miles an hour. But let's forecast this for you if we could. Okay, let's go to tonight. Let's just a couple hours from now. We'll be forecasting winds to pick up here and then gust about 44 miles an hour in Naples. Winds picking up for us in Fort Myers as well. And then let's fast forward to tomorrow. Okay, midday tomorrow when the eye may be at its closest. Okay, Fort Myers 95 sustained. Wind gusts of 134 miles an hour. Wind gusts in Naples of 137 miles an hour with sustained winds over 100. Tomorrow evening, forecast doesn't change all that much, but now look at Tampa. Sustained winds at 62, gusts to 92 miles an hour. A gust in Fort Myers, 114. Gusts here in Naples, 134 miles an hour. Tomorrow overnight, now winds gusting in Tampa over 100 miles an hour. Winds slowly starting to back off now for Fort Myers and Naples as we get on the backside, and the winds have shifted now around to the west and southwest. And then by midday on Monday, we still may have tropical storm force gusts in a place like Naples and a place like Tampa even. But by Monday, the worst will be past us, and we'll start to really see some improving weather and hopefully maybe even some sunshine by later in the day. But we're afraid that Irma is just going to throw a haymaker at us tomorrow, and it is just going to be a very difficult day for much of the west coast of Florida. Obviously today, where a lot of people were getting out of town, some doing it the very last minute, as NBC's Kerry Sanders reports.
This is Kerry Sanders in Naples, Florida. Today, Alligator Alley, the main road connecting west to east in Florida, with a rush towards Miami. Many on the west coast who thought they were safe, now scrambling to get out.
We really don't know what to do. It's stressful.
Michael Carr lives in Fort Myers.
I'm frightened to hell because I don't think this house can hold up.
Florida Governor Rick Scott warning the storm surge could reach the tops of homes.
This is a life-threatening situation. Remember, the storm surge comes after the wind. Do not think the storm is over when the wind slows down.
Everglades City, the fishing village south of Naples, could find itself swamped by a 12-foot storm surge. Same flooding threat on Marco, an island about the same size as Manhattan. Michael Callahan decided not to evacuate.
We're prepared for a storm surge unless it gets up to the third floor.
Today, lowering hurricane shutters, confident they will protect his family. 13 years ago, Hurricane Charlie, a Category 4, leveled several West Coast communities. The damage extended 26 miles inland to Arcadia, where today residents prepared for another hit.
I've been working, day and night, trying to prepare for it. I haven't been sleeping too well.
Tonight, tens of thousands of homes across Florida have already lost power. More than 16,000 electric crews ready to move in.
We've assembled the largest pre-storm workforce, not just in our company's history, but in the United States.
First responders bracing for the worst-case scenario.
This storm is Hurricane Andrew on steroids.
The Marco Island Fire Department goes into lockdown when winds hit 45 miles per hour.
If they call you during the middle of the hurricane for help, what happens?
They're on their own.
That's as Kerry Sanders reporting, and we know that we've got a long way to go before this storm is over. Mark Elliott joining us from the Weather Channel headquarters. Mark, there's listen, I've been through 24 plus hurricanes. Even I'm getting a little bit nervous right now of what it may look like here in Fort Myers and in Naples tomorrow, because 100 mile-an-hour winds, 135 mile-an-hour gusts. So many things could become unrecognizable because of what Irma dishes out.
And Mike, that leads me right into the question I wanted to ask you. With that kind of forecast, you have to worry about yourself and your crew there. Talk about what your plan is when those winds really ramp up.
For TV purposes, we'd love to be down here and show you what maybe storm surge is doing, be exposed to wind and show you how bad it is. I don't think that the weather's going to allow us to do that. I think it'll just end up being too dangerous for us, and we wouldn't want to travel in excessive winds, right? So we have a backup location that we'll broadcast from tomorrow if we can for you. It's a cement building. It sits pretty high. It sits about 9 feet above the street level, which would put it higher than where the flooding hopefully will be. And I think that's where we may end up having to hunker down, because safety comes first. No chances tomorrow, and hopefully everyone home, same thing. You can't take any chances with conditions like this.
For real Weather Channel fans that watch us a lot, we've seen what it looks like when Jim Cantore was in the wind tunnel, right? Picture standing out there at 130 plus miles per hour. The sights and sounds tomorrow are going to be ridiculous.
I would say this, Mark. A lot of people say, I'd like to get out there and, maybe experience like 100-mile-an-hour wind. That would be so cool. You can't stand in 100-mile-an-hour wind. Think about this when a guy like Jim Cantore was in the wind tunnel at Virginia Tech, right? He had to be strapped in. He was tethered. He had a big harness on, and he was tethered as the wind was hitting him. You have to be strapped down to something in order to manage to stay upright in winds like that. So this is why you've got to be in some very, very sturdy shelter that's meant to take that kind of wind, because humans aren't meant to take that kind of wind.
And Mike, I want you to talk about one other point with that wind. It's not just the wind out there. It's also what's breaking in the wind, right? It's debris-filled 100-mile-per-hour winds.
Yeah, think about business signs, think about street signs, think about street lights, think about trees, mailbox. I mean, everything can become a projectile because you're basically saying we're going to bring a really big tornado your way, and we're going to mow some things down. We're going to throw it in the air, and that's a real danger. And so that's why everyone should be inside. If you want to, you peek out the window. If you're in a, you have hurricane windows, but that's about it, right? You don't want to become a victim to any of those things, hopefully. Now, hopefully, I will say this, though, Mark. In a lot of places that are exposed to hurricanes on a regular basis, they're fortified for those things. Street signs are reinforced. They have certain codes for business signs that have to be low, or they have to be built out of concrete or brick or stuff like that. So hopefully we can reduce the amount of flying projectiles, but it can be a risk in some areas.
Yeah, I mean, just a piece of siding coming off a house. We were talking about that video with Cantori in the wind tunnel when he was just strapped down. We can show everyone a piece of that as well, because it's not just about, this is one thing, right? When you're testing what it feels like when you're in wind like this, you can see his face getting blown back, right? But he is in a protected location. If something were to break where you are, Mike, all of that stuff gets thrown in that wind.
Yeah, it becomes a real danger because, maybe you want to go out there and take a little look and it seems pretty decent outside. Then all of a sudden you get a really good wind gust and a gutter gets ripped off a house and it comes your way. You don't want to have to be ducking cover constantly and stuff like that. And I will say something else about, those images of Jim and the jaws flapping and everything in the wind, it's dramatic, right? I've been in that same wind tunnel before, and I'll say this about the stuff that flies, even in that wind tunnel, which is clean, Mark, the winds get so intense in there, it was peeling the paint off the walls, and little chips of paint are flying at you in the face. That just goes to show you how strong the winds are. They can actually strip the paint off those walls of that wind tunnel. That can happen to homes, and like you said, siding, shingles, roof tiles, gutters, all those things could become flying objects in this hurricane.
Yeah, Mike, as you mentioned, it could be an unrecognizable landscape tomorrow as some of the core of those winds come through. So we know you're going to keep everybody safe, yourself and your crew included. Thanks for chatting with us. We'll get back to you in just a second. Quickly, it's not just a Southwest Florida story, right? We're watching Southeast Florida. We're watching bands that are already producing tornadoes, including near Fort Pierce, a new tornado warning in St. Lucie County until 10 o'clock.
Trying to survive winter on summer tires is not smart. Fortunately, there's TireRack.com. Right now, you can get up to an $80 prepaid MasterCard when you buy a set of 4 select winter or snow tires. For details, go to TireRack.com. Be smart this winter. You'll be glad you were. TireRack.com. Find, deliver, install. Smarter.
It's just a floodlight.
Sorry, didn't mean to alarm you. Get smart about home security. With the Ring Floodlight Cam, you can stop crime before it happens. That's security in a whole new light.
Not enough room in your closet? Save space with the new Wonder Hanger Max. Now bigger and 50% stronger. It's easy. Just place 5 garments in the open slots. Lift and release. Wonder Hanger Max triples your closet space for neat, wrinkle-free, organized clothes. Strong enough for 5 heavy winter coats or 30 pounds of golf clubs. From purses to quilts. Organize your entire wardrobe with a Wonder Hanger Max system. Enough to hold 50 garments in one closet. Get your Wonder Hanger Max today. Available at most retailers.
Hi, I'm Governor Rick Scott. As Hurricane Irma approaches, I am urging every Floridian to get a plan and be prepared for potential life-threatening impacts. For shelter information, evacuation routes, and other resources, visit floridadisaster.org. Every Floridian should have 3 days of water, non-perishable food, and medication. Stay informed and follow evacuation orders. Remember, we can rebuild your home, but we can't rebuild your life.
Currently in our area, 55 degrees under clear skies. Tonight, mostly clear, low 52, winds light and variable. Sunday, mainly sunny. Sunday night, some clouds early will give way to generally clear conditions overnight. Low 49, winds light and variable. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Wouldn't you like to be out on the rolling sea with only the sky above?
Hey, Grandpa. Hey, kid. Really good to see you. You too. You told Grandma you were going fishing again? Maybe.
The best things in life keep going. That's why I got a Subaru too.
Introducing the all-new Crosstrek. Love is out there. Find it in a Subaru Crosstrek.
Take 5, guys.
Tired of your bladder always cutting into your day? You may have overactive bladder or OAB.
That's it. We really need to get with the program and see the doctor.
Take charge and ask your doctor about Mirbetriq Mirabegron for OAB symptoms of urgency, frequency, and leakage. It's the first and only OAB treatment in its class.
Mirbetriq may cause serious allergic reactions. If you experience swelling of the face, lips, throat, or tongue, or difficulty breathing, stop taking Mirbetriq and tell your doctor right away. Mirbetriq may increase blood pressure. Tell your doctor right away if you have trouble emptying your bladder or have a weak urine stream. Mirbetriq may affect or be affected by other medications. Before taking Mirbetriq, tell your doctor if you have liver or kidney problems. Common side effects include increased blood pressure, common cold symptoms, urinary tract infection, constipation, diarrhea, dizziness, and headache.
Okay, time to do this.
Don't let your bladder always take the lead. Ask your doctor if Mirbetriq is right for you and visit mirbetriq.com to learn more.
So tell us your big idea for getting the whole country booking on choicehotels.com.
4 words. Bada book, bada boom. Let it sink in.
Shouldn't we say we have the lowest price?
Nope. Bada book, bada boom.
Have you ever stayed with Choice Hotels, like at a Comfort Inn?
Yep. Free waffles. Can't go wrong.
I like it.
Promote that guy.
Get the lowest price on our rooms, guaranteed. When you book direct at choicehotels.com. Book now.
Elephants. We feel a deep connection with these sensitive giants of the wild. Yet there is something you should know. As many as 30,000 elephants are killed each year by vicious criminals as demand for needless ivory trinkets explodes. But with your help, we can make a change. WWF is working around the world to address global threats to wildlife and their habitats, such as poaching and illegal ivory trade. We need your support now more than ever. For just $8 a month, you can symbolically adopt an elephant and help save them and other endangered species and their habitats. To adopt now, call us or visit mywwf.org and receive a free adoption kit as our way of saying thank you. Elephant lives are at stake. Please help save them now.
As Hurricane Irma approaches, there is one place to turn to and to trust. Trust in the Weather Channel.
There is a serious threat of significant storm surge flooding along the entire west coast of Florida, and this has increased to 15 feet of impact above ground level. 15 feet of impact above ground level. Think about that. 15 feet is devastating and will cover your house. In the Tampa Bay area, the surge is forecasted to be 5 to 8 feet. Think about that. The typical first story is 7 to 10 feet, 5 to 8 feet. This is a life-threatening situation. Remember, the storm surge comes after the wind. Do not think the storm is over when the wind slows down.
Surge is always the most dangerous and deadly component of any tropical system, and unfortunately in Irma, it has the potential to be so again. The forecast for surge across much of southeast Florida is getting towards the ridiculous size, right? And here's the scale over here. The orange color, 6 to 9 feet, the red 9+. And what that means is the amount of water above normally dry ground. Zooming in on a couple of cities here across southwest Florida, let's start out as we get real tight in so you can find where you are. Here's Naples, right? Look at how far inland we're talking about, that 9-foot+ category. This is a catastrophic situation and extremely dangerous for those that have not heeded those evacuation warnings. Going up the coast just a bit, remember, it is always the surge and the flooding that prompts those evacuating the wind. But when there's water like this over Fort Myers Beach, that is something you have to run from. And it's not just a beach thing. Straight up the rivers, that water gets pushed. So outside Fort Myers itself, Fort Myers isn't actually all the way onto the coastline, and yet there's going to be significant surge coming off the river. And Tampa Bay is an extremely vulnerable spot as well. And with this storm coming close, we now have a couple of areas to watch here. Not only outside St. Petersburg off of Tampa Bay, but near Tampa itself. Look at this. You've got potential for significant surge as well. So it's one thing to see this color-coded on a map. It's a whole other thing completely when we start talking about what that looks like in real life and what that means for those of you that are going to experience something like this. Let's start out by looking at this house and adding 1 to 3 feet of surge, which is already really destructive. Think about filling a moving box, a typical moving box size box with water. That box will now weigh as much as a smart car. Let's go even further up, because once you're past 2 feet to 3 feet of surge, most cars will float away. Now you've got water going through the first floor of your building. It's 6 feet. It's taller than me already. Remember, these numbers are for water above normally dry ground. Then it gets even more catastrophic. You go towards 9 feet, entire homes can be washed away, because it's not just a slow rise of this surge like a bathtub. This is the ocean. We've got wave action on top of that, battering down any structures that are in the path of this increased water. And finally, in this case, we may have more than 9 feet of surge. That's now getting towards second-story buildings, a deadly and destructive component.
So we have a live look here at Duval Street in Key West, Florida. You can hear the winds, and it's going to get louder than that as the night and the early morning hours go on. You can see the palm trees not swaying all that much yet. You can still see some of the power lines dangling there, neither of which might still be standing by this time tomorrow. Another look is waves coming on to land. This is a taste of things to come as the winds of the hurricane, and the core of the hurricane is well to the south of Key West still, but the winds are pushing the Atlantic Ocean and Gulf of Mexico around. And before all is said and done, the Florida Keys are going to see both the Atlantic to normally dry ground in a very dangerous way. It's going to be a rough go in the Keys. And this is why we told people to get out, mainly because of the storm surge, but also the life-threatening hurricane force winds of a major hurricane that could be a Category 4 when it passes near or over the Keys. Now, certainly the hurricane is going to pass over the Keys, just a matter of where the exact center goes that we don't know exactly. But already Irma is making its presence known not just in the Florida Keys, but in the South Florida Peninsula, all the way Lake Okeechobee southward, even the tornado warning up there in the Fort Pierce area. So things are really picking up. Key West has received gusts at the airport to 67 miles per hour. That's a small percentage of what we're going to get later on when the core of the hurricane comes nearby. And look at this nasty band that has made its way into Broward County and over in Collier County on the Naples side with a lot of lightning and sustained winds of tropical storm force in Fort Lauderdale. So again, this is not just going to be affecting the west coast of Florida. Winds 120 miles an hour as of 10 p.m. Eastern time, Category 3. Pressure's down to 933 millibars. It's moving west-northwest. And look at how useless the cone can be when you're close to land in terms of the winds of tropical storm force already now making their way past the Naples area into the Fort Lauderdale area, and that's going to continue northward. And there's also stronger winds in the isolated tornadoes and some of those nasty bands. So Lake Okeechobee southward under a tornado watch. We already saw that warning up in Fort Pierce, so obviously this is going to have to be extended northward as the night goes on. Here is the center path again. It could go along the left side of this cone and maybe make landfall up near Tallahassee, and they could get a stronger hurricane if it spends less time over land. Could take the right side of this cone or go over Orlando. Could go somewhere in the middle. In any event, a catastrophic, life-threatening storm surge and wind event in southwest Florida, in addition to the Florida Keys. So we are going to see amazing pictures of what happens with Irma. Our live coverage continues here on Irma, here on the Weather Channel. Stay with us.
Millions of Floridians will begin seeing impacts with life-threatening winds tonight.
The entire west coast of Florida is at a grave threat from this hurricane. From Miami, it's already blowing. Fort Lauderdale, it's already blowing.
I don't think anybody alive today has ever seen in this state anything like this.
Hurricane Irma, a deadly monster. A major hurricane about to hit the Keys, less than 100 miles from Key West, and you can see how nasty the water already is. Already waves and surge pushing onshore here, and this is just the beginning. As that eye gets closer and closer, the water only gets higher and higher, and this is why so many people have fled the Florida Keys. Thanks for staying with us. This is the Weather Channel's live Hurricane Irma coverage. I'm meteorologist Mike Bettis coming to you from Naples, Florida, where we think we'll be next in line after this comes through the Keys. And the winds here could be epic, easily gusting over 130 mile an hour at its closest approach. And we think the eye may be making a landfall somewhere on the west coast by tomorrow afternoon or evening. Take a look what's going on with Irma right now. The radar clearly shows what's happening. We have pretty strong winds with some of the outer bands that have rolled through across South Florida, including Fort Lauderdale and Miami. Now we're getting some bands through southwest Florida. The eye down now south of the Keys, but is going to roll its way right past the Keys and then right into the Gulf of Mexico, and we think cause tremendous damage in numerous areas. And we believe now it is making that abrupt right turn. We expected to make a sharp right turn. We've been waiting and waiting for it to do that, and we believe now it may have done that, or at least starting to. Our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knapp, joining us now. Dr. Knapp, do you think that it's happening now, and how quick will it then start to turn north, and will it start to accelerate again? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like an accelerating hurricane may be a benefit to the West Coast.
Well, it is in the process of turning, and it will probably start to make a harder right turn, but gradually overnight. It's not going to just stop and go 90 degrees to the right, but it is going west-northwestward after having been going straight west last night. And all the models insist that turn is going to happen overnight, and it will go near or over the lower Florida Keys. Now, it'll be kind of slow as it's making the turn, but it will accelerate as it goes northward, which what Mike is getting at there is that a faster moving hurricane is better than a slower moving hurricane or a stationary hurricane like Harvey was, because that will lessen the duration of the winds and the heavy rainfall. But it is going to be a strong enough and large enough hurricane to do its damage in terms of wind and water, coastal and inland, regardless of the fact that it will be moving and accelerating as it goes northward over the next couple of days. So it's good that it's not going to stall over anybody's particular spot, but it is going to be moving slowly enough, and it's big enough to wreak a lot of havoc. Right now it's Category 3, but as it leaves Cuba, it is likely to strengthen back to Category 4 as the center of the hurricane and its eye wall. The inner eye wall has been a little bit disjointed, but there's this outer one that's in pretty good shape, unfortunately, and that's about to completely clear Cuba, and there's just nothing but warm, warm water between Cuba and southwest Florida. Going over the Florida Keys won't hinder it at all. It is already bringing some tropical storm force winds on the Florida Peninsula. Very strong gusts and sustained hurricane force about to make their way into the Florida Keys. And that will just be the beginning of several hours of hurricane force winds. And because the center of the hurricane is going to be closer to the lower Florida Keys than the upper Florida Keys, that puts the entire Keys on the stronger side of the hurricane, where the Atlantic Ocean will get pushed onto the normally dry ground of the islands. And then when the hurricane goes by, the backside will produce storm surge there as well. And that and the winds are why people were told to get out of the Keys. Then as it goes farther north, this entire wind field will go over the Florida Peninsula. So there is essentially a certainty that just about everybody on the Florida Peninsula will receive winds of tropical storm force. We've already seen sustained tropical storm force at times in Fort Lauderdale, gust recently to 48. They cleared 60 miles an hour earlier as this nasty band has gone through. And there's also flash flood warnings starting to pop up. This one near the Collier, Lee County border between Naples and Fort Myers, a training band there, tornado warning up near Fort Pierce. So all the event right now, and the gusts in the Keys are even stronger. Now, with the forecast path, important again to realize how useless the cone gets in terms of conveying who's getting what hazards the closer it gets to land. Obviously, we're getting impacts outside of the cone, and we don't know exactly where in the cone this center of circulation is going to go. It could go along the west side and spend more time over water, maybe get stronger than what is forecast here, because that forecast is assuming some land interaction. But if it stays farther west, we could have a much stronger system making landfall in the Florida Big Bend area, where we could have some very significant storm surge, in addition to the catastrophic life-threatening storm surge we're expecting in southwest Florida. It could also do the opposite and spend more time over land and maybe have a more direct impact in Orlando. So it's not just a guaranteed thing that the center's going to go over Tampa, which it could. So here's the near certainty of tropical storm force winds over the Florida Peninsula. And then with hurricane force winds, the chances are greater in the western part of the Florida Peninsula, but not zero in the eastern part. Still have a hurricane warning up for the entire Florida Peninsula. And that is why we are expecting extensive power outages. Don't light candles indoors. Don't run generators indoors. Don't get out on the roads and touch down power lines. Power outages can be trouble if you don't handle them properly. And then when it comes to the storm surge, this is where the biggest trouble is with southwest Florida, this catastrophic life-threatening storm surge event that could unfold with 10 to 15 feet of storm surge flooding above normally dry ground. In a little while, we'll look at the potential storm surge flooding map and delve into the details down there in southwest Florida, Mike, where, boy, I hope people have gotten out of those areas that have been told to evacuate.
Stand by.
So, Mike, back to you.
All right, Doc. A lot of places where there's so much concern. Certainly now, we thought at one point it was going to be the East Coast, and now we think it's certainly going to be a huge impact on the West Coast. Let's run through the winds for you, okay? Dr. Nab was talking about the surge. Let's run through the winds for like a Tampa, Fort Myers, and Naples, okay? Things get really bad beginning tomorrow morning. Things will ramp up quickly overnight tonight. And when you wake up tomorrow morning, you'll see a hurricane force winds. And then look at the gusts as we go through the day, okay? We're talking winds that'll be sustained at times over 100 miles an hour, and then wind gusts that'll go higher than 130 miles an hour. And we could be talking for an extended period. It'll be daylight hours mostly that you see that. And then winds start to pick up even in Tampa, where we could see wind gusts close to 100 miles an hour, okay? That's going to be rough stuff, unfortunately, and that's going to cause a lot of power outages, going to cause a lot of damage, a lot of trees are going to come down, and it is not going to be a good time for anyone on the West Coast. Where they're not having a good time right now is down in the Keys. The southern tip there of Florida. Let's check in with the storm tracker, Mike Tice. He's there right now. Mike, good to talk to you this evening, my friend. We know that we've already had hurricane force wind gusts there. What are you experiencing right now?
Yeah, Mike, we've already been witnessing a lot of boats breaking free and floating out into the ocean. We've noticed docks breaking. The storm surge is coming in quite rapidly now. Those were the last visuals we had just before sunset. So now it's pitch dark outside. We've lost power. The wind is starting to pick up, and we know that this is just the beginning. This is going to be a long, terrifying night, and we're going to bunker down here in the hotel and make it through.
Do you feel confident where you are, Mike? Where are you? How high above ground, how high above water are you, and can you ride out this surge?
Absolutely. We're in a very, very big concrete complex hotel that starts off on the 15th floor, and then it has 7 floors that can go up. It's a very strong building. It's been here since 1926, and we feel very confident with this structure.
A lot of folks there?
There is. In fact, it's a sold-out hotel. A lot of the locals came in to get out of their homes to a safer place. And like I said, it's sold out, and we're all just hanging out here in the lobby right now, seeing what's going to happen. What was really eerie when we checked in, they had a huge bowl of earplugs that they gave all the guests. So when the wind gets really loud tomorrow morning, they can use these earplugs. I've never seen something like that before.
Well, yeah, me neither. That's wild. Hey, Mike, we've been watching the camera that's on Duval Street, and let's be serious. On a Saturday night, Duval Street in the summer, it is a happening place, right? You're going to see all kinds of things on Duval. It's empty. There's nobody out there. I think that's a good sign, though.
It's a great sign. I'm happy not to see anybody out there, but like you said, it's usually very busy, and it's just very eerie now to walk around and see nobody out there. But we are not out there anymore either. We're going to be in this building for the rest of this storm and stay safe.
Mike, I know you've been down to the Keys before. What are you expecting to see tomorrow once Irma passes by and the weather starts to improve? What do you think it may look like?
It's going to look horrible. I actually grew up down here and have experienced many hurricanes, and many of the hurricanes were just near misses. They didn't even make landfall, and it caused all kinds of flooding.